welcome everybody to our monthly webinar on our health plan check-in and Q&A. And again, we have with us Mandy from Adept Benefits, and Sarah Tarp is with us today as well as Megan Narrance from all from Adept Benefits, our broker, who assists us with our selecting our health plans, as well as helping us as we have challenges or needs within those. And Mandy today is with us to help us with our topic this month. So I'll turn time over to her, and we'll open it up from there.
Yeah, our topic this month is going to be focusing a little bit more on what we call balance bills. And I'll start by just defining them and how they work and why we see them in plans. And then I can also talk a little bit about what to do if you think you have one, or if you're just trying to figure out if that's what you're seeing, or if this truly is what your out of pocket is to the provider. So when you go to a provider and they bill your medical insurance through your HMA, what ends up happening is the provider and HMA have an agreed upon price, behind the scenes. They have a contracted price, just like any other service. There's a price that the provider says, here's what I want to be reimbursed for the service. If HMA's price and the provider's price match, frequently that means we have either a contract with them in place, or sometimes it's just because it happens to be close enough that it matches. So sometimes in an out-of-network situation, even though we don't have a contract, HMA's price and the provider's price will be pretty dang close. And whatever HMA pays them, they'll accept as kind of paid in full. And in those cases, so either it's an in-network, we have a contract with them, or it's just an out-of-network where HMA is paying pretty close to what the provider is asking. In those cases, you're kind of set at your out-of-pocket cost is set by the plan. It's exactly what you see in your plan summary. So if it's a copay, I owe a $25 copay, a $40 copay, whatever it is, then that's what I'm going to have to pay and nothing more. What happens sometimes is that the price isn't agreed upon. So it happens a lot of times when we have a provider that's not contracted. So we either haven't done one of our specific proprietary contracts that are through the sound plan, or one of the contracts with a network, with one of our external networks, which we use two in the tier 3 part of the plan. We use the PNOAE network and we use PHCS network, a whole lot of letters, but they're big provider contracts for the professional part of services. So they cover a lot of services with just provider to provider versus hospitals or other thing we would call facility. So we have networks contracts, we have sound plan contracts, and then we have those folks that just haven't put in an agreement yet. So when you go and see those folks that haven't put in an agreement with the sound plan, you take the risk that you'll have what's called a balance bill. So you'll go and see the provider, HMA will reimburse that provider based on what they think is their price, what they think should be the reimbursed price. The provider gets the reimbursement and says, well, we don't agree to this, and I actually think I deserve more. The difference between those two things is what's called a balance bill. So the balance between what HMA pays and what the provider is willing to accept as a balance bill. And in that case, the provider has a choice. They can either write off the difference, and they can say, we're just going to take what we get, or they can balance bill that fee to you. They have the right to say, well, your insurance only paid us, let's just say $200, and we think we're owed $300. So that extra $100, you have to pay us directly. And you as a member, because you sought the care and you have the agreement with the provider has the right to collect that from you. There are some cases where balance bills are totally legitimate. They happen in the plan, and the provider has the right to do it, and the plan doesn't have any obligation to pay more. That would be out-of-network services in that tier 4, the far tier, where it's truly a provider that we don't have a direct contract with, you haven't reached out and got a single case agreement with, and it's not emergent. So it wasn't an emergency situation where you didn't have a choice. You had a choice of provider, you chose for whatever reason, and you have always that choice to say, nah, I'm not going to go here. I really want to go to this provider, and they're out of network, and I know that. I'm going to have that higher cost share. In those cases, the plan's going to have the opportunity. They're going to pay the provider. The provider might balance bill you. In a lot of cases, they do. And that is truly your obligation under the plan. So you have the choice to go to those in-network providers. You chose not to. The balance bill is owed, therefore, by you as taking on that responsibility. There are other times where you see a balance bill where it wasn't necessarily due to you for a variety of reasons. So you've seen just in our communication that we have a really complex plan that tries to drive down those costs of healthcare to you. But in doing that and driving down those costs, we have a lot of moving parts. We've got contracts with providers, like I said, internally, just with the sound plan. We've also got contracts in those other external networks. All of the paperwork going back and forth means there's times when a provider sees you, says, hey, we aren't going to accept that price. We think HMA owes us more. We're going to charge you. And then we take it to HMA and they say, oops, provider did it wrong. Or oops, we did it wrong. We need to pay the provider more. So in those cases, balance bills are not supposed to be paid by you. So a lot of employees come to HMA, to Sound Family Medicine, to Human Resources, and say, they're telling me I owe them an additional $100 or $200 or whatever it is. What should I do? Do I owe it? Is it one of those reasonable cases, or is it just truly a mistake on the end of the provider or on HMA side? Question is really valid. So when that comes up, what you would do as a member is ask that question. So the first place to go and look a lot of times would be on your EOB statements to kind of look and see, what does it say? What does HMA say my amount is? If HMA says I'm supposed to pay $300, well, then I actually do owe the provider that $300. If HMA says I was only supposed to pay $150, but the provider's charging me $300, well, that's a pretty big clue that there's a balance bill there. And that'd be a good time to ask that question and say, is this legitimate? Do I owe this additional amount? Or does HMA need to do a little bit more work, talk to the provider, get that contractor or solve that contractual issue and pay them a little bit more, have the provider write off the difference? And that's what HMA does. That's their goal in that advocacy role that they play, is to make sure that you're truly paying what you owe. So we have deductibles, we have out-of-pocket maximums. Those are relevant for you as a member to pay. That's the way the plan works. We all have a little bit of cost share associated with it, while the plan carries the majority of the risk. But we don't want you paying any more than you actually owe. So if you get one of those bills and you say to yourself, this just doesn't look right, I thought this was going to be a copay, or I was pretty sure I saw this provider on our network list and HMA or the provider is acting like they don't know what I'm talking about, or that they aren't aware of this contract, then that would be the time to reach out to one of your resources. That'd be us, Sound Family Medicine, Human Resources, get you in contact with us. You can go straight to HMA, talk to member services, say, if they don't give you the right answer, go straight to an advocate. Say, I want to talk to my specific advocate because I still don't feel right about this. You can do all of those things and get straight to the answer. And what we'll do is either have the claim readjudicated, so they'll pay a different amount to the provider if that's the case, or they'll try to negotiate with the provider and get that amount written off if they need to do that. So we don't ever want you to feel like that balance, that additional bill is something you're just holding and being asked to pay without any assistance or advocacy. And it's one of the challenges of healthcare in general, even on, those of us on the broker side, myself and Megan and Sarah, when we work with plans that have fully insured programs. So, let's just take a big one, like a Cigna plan or Regions, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, or whatever. When they have out-of-network services, especially for urgent, emergent type situations, balance bills are really common. And one of the good things is federally, they're putting in some laws in place that are going to hold providers to a little bit different standard, to say, we want providers to actually negotiate better with insurance companies to try to alleviate some of that risk of balance bill on members. That's legislation that was passed late last year, and it's starting to be implemented in plans in the next year or two as you renew. So there's going to be more language that protects employees from even situations where there's emergencies, where they don't have a choice and they need to be airlifted somewhere, go to a hospital or something like that. And they didn't have a choice on that balance bill or that higher out-of-pocket maximum. So that kind of legislation is coming down as part of, the evolution of healthcare reform. But we are all still here to assist you in the meantime with managing those balance bills as they come in. Those are valid questions. And as we build the sound plan, we're going to hopefully get all of those things solved and smoothed out. But, when we're adding providers every week, every other week, those kind of miscommunications where there's an organization of maybe 30 or 40 employees, it would not be out of the realm of common for one or two employees to just not know about that particular contract and to just literally just make a mistake and price it wrong. And we don't want you to pay the bill on that case. So hopefully that explains what a balance bill is and what to do if you think you have one. If you're seeing a bill that just doesn't look right.
Awesome. That's great, Amanda. Thank you so much. Anything else? Any questions for Amanda around that topic? It's a good one. And you're welcome to ask those either via the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask those questions. Okay, so they're thinking, the wheels are turning.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick on Donna here for a second. Donna, do you have other questions that have come up that are similar to this issue that Amanda may have not touched on yet on that piece?
I know that I have had one issue that I'm still working on where it's exactly like Amanda said. So a bill has been received for an amount that it does reconcile with the EOB from HMA. However, the provider is directly contracted with Sound Family Medicine. Therefore, the understanding is that the charges would be covered at 100%, that there would be no balance remaining for the participant to pay. So I'm working with the member advocate to try and figure out why HMA has only paid a percentage of the bill as opposed to 100% of the bill. So it's in discussion right now, and it's where we're at right now is just an understanding of whether the coverage really is supposed to be 100% or not. So it's kind of a lot of back and forth. So I think it's good to have for the participants to have other resources besides just themselves against the provider, or just themselves with the member advocate. It's good to let everybody know that they can reach out to the Human Resources Department for support. And then if need be, we can also get anyone at Adept Benefits involved as well, because sometimes I've found with this particular case is that we're kind of at a brick wall, so to speak, whereas I think it's one way and HMA is saying they think it's the other way, and so it's unresolved. And so it's nice to be able to have an additional resources in case you get stuck with not getting the answer you think is correct from the member advocate. So always remember to reach out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they can a lot of times, I mean, you sometimes feel like you have to call on the phone to get access to one of those folks. We a lot of times can handle things through email, which is sometimes just more convenient for your schedule versus sitting on the phone or waiting for an answer on a phone call. So we can do that a lot of times via email and get to something a little bit quicker. So do feel like you can reach out to us for some of those questions and just kind of following up and getting to the source of where the issue lies, whether it truly is just a mistake in our communication, or if it's where HMA just needs to adjust how it was paid, or maybe the provider submitted it wrong. So there's a variety of places, unfortunately, where it could go wrong, but that's where we come in to kind of help sort through all that mess and get to the final answer.
Exactly.
For those that are on the call with us, was this helpful? Do you have additional questions around this?
Yes, this is Lay. Very helpful. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I recently transitioned over to our plan and haven't got any bills yet. So, I think that's great news. I do have some questions around the pharmacy and medications. Could I ask those questions here?
Sure.
Okay. So I actually am logged into that drexy.com website now, and what I was hoping for is to identify if there's a preferred pharmacy that that would be within the network that I could get low cost medication. But I think the process with Drexy is you would have to enter that medication, and then they would give you a list of pharmacies and the costs associated with purchasing those medications through those pharmacies.
Yeah, they actually have an app. I don't know if you've been able to download that or interested in downloading it, but they have a really great app. So firstly, the Drexy network pharmacy for retail pharmacies is pretty expansive. So all of the network pharmacies you think of, the grocery store ones, or even just the Walgreens style Rite Aids that are separate standalone pharmacies are all in the Drexy network. So they're all available to go to. But you're right, for one particular medication, one pharmacy might be a better cost than another. And it's relevant to the reimbursement rate from that particular pharmacy and the way they acquire them. And that's just kind of the way the back end of the pharmaceutical industry works. So each of those pharmacies acquire them at a different volume discount. So Drexy has a great app where you can go in and enter that medication and see exactly which pharmacies in your area are going to have the best price if you're willing to do that kind of shopping around. Generally speaking, if you're just wanting to find one pharmacy to be convenient and say, I'm just going to pick a pharmacy and have it be mine, usually, and this is a total generalization, it's not necessarily true in all cases, but in a lot of cases, the pharmacies that are attached to grocery stores have a tendency to have a better volume discount. So the Walmart pharmacies, Fred Meyer pharmacies, Safeway pharmacies tend to be a little bit better on volume discounts in terms of your cost share, how low the cost of the drug is, than the standalones, the Walgreens. But that's a pretty broad statement. If you wanted to do that price shopping for each individual med, we obviously love you to do that. Because it's not just you that's saving, but also the plan. And Drexy has a really good app for doing that. That you should look at. Maybe just that might be much more convenient than the website.
Got it. Yeah, I'm not finding the website to be that intuitive, so very interested in downloading the app. I have an iPhone and I'm in the App Store, and I'm typing in just Drexy, DREXI, and I'm not pulling up that app. Is there another name I should be looking at?
There is probably. I don't have their little flyer in front of me, but what we'll do is get a copy of that to Donna and Kevin and see if they can ship it out to you or to the group as a whole so that we have a reminder of how to utilize that.
Perfect. That would be great. And then just utilizing the web-based application. So I plugged in one medication, and that did give me a list of, pharmacies and the costs associated with it. And then I plugged in another medication, but then now it's prompting me to, put down a quantity. Well, it's a drop down and there aren't any options. So it's not updating the information and populating, the pharmacy or the cost associated. Are you familiar with that bug?
I'm not familiar with that bug. So that's another one I don't want you to send that in the chat feature, but I'll get you our email address. You can send me that question and what drug that is so we can make them aware of the kind of bug that it just doesn't have any quantity or maybe the specific quantity that you're able to put in. And we'll find out.
So I tried two different drugs, and it gives the strength drop down, the form drop down, but when it comes to the quantity field, there isn't a drop down in terms of options that I can select. And so it doesn't update the information.
Okay.
But this is helpful. Thank you.
Quantity drop down. Okay. All right. I will address that with them and find out how we go about getting that update. And I'll get you the flyer on the app as well.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Lai. And And it doesn't have to be related to this topic that we talked about today either, as they pointed out she had a different question. So we answered the questions that you had on the topic today. Great, but if you had any other questions, now is your time to ask those questions, and I'd be happy to take those. If not, we'll end for another month and we'll meet again next month. Our meeting is on the 20th at the same time, 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, and we'll publish this information that we shared today. Thank you so much, Amanda and Sarah and Megan, for your guys' time and helping us in facilitating these meetings and giving us information on these topics. I think it's been very helpful for everybody that's participated in this, those that have received, seen it afterwards. And I know it's been helpful for me and for Donna as well. So thank you again. And thanks for everybody for participating, and we'll meet again next month. Thank you.
Thank you,
Take care.
everyone.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks. Bye-bye.
So, thank you.